How did you get on with that task? Hopefully now you can actually destroy the bat and the ghost. So let's take a look at what we've done. So on the bat, simply create a new tag called bat, a new tag called ghost, given the bat the tag of bat, and then put a box collider on there. Now the box colliders will come in absolutely huge to begin with. So I'm using the value size of 0.03, 0.05 and 0.03. Okay, and then the same for the ghost. The ghost just has a tag of ghost, and the size of the box collider is 0.03. Okay, and then in our script, we simply have pretty much a duplicate of this actually. So if it.transform.compare tag bat, it runs the die trigger on the animation, and then we start a coroutine called bat death. Ghost, there's no animation, so we just simply start a coroutine called ghost death. Okay, be careful not to run your physics raycast too many times. You only really need to call it once, and then all of your checks to see what it hit can take place inside of there. Okay, and then down here we've got IEnumerator bat death, yield return, and I've created a new wait for seconds called bat death time. Hit transform, game object set active to false. Same with the ghost, and I'm using that same death time as bat. So what I've done, wait for seconds, bat death time, new wait for seconds 1. Alright, because they can be destroyed a lot quicker than the zombies, since the zombie has a longer death animation. Alright, that's how easy that is. Now it would be nice that when we actually kill one of these enemies that we get some kind of particle effects to appear. And that's what we've got this pack JMO assets cartoon effects for. The one that I want to use first of all is CFX3 and MISC, this CFX3 skull explosion. Now feel free to check them all out, see what they are, and choose your own if you want. But as I drag this into the game world, you'll see what that looks like. Alright, quite nice. Now we can see it's actually made up of multiple elements. Each one of these elements is going to have its own shader. Alright, now they are cartoon effects particle additives, but it is going to add to your draw calls, unfortunately, but not too bad. I mean, like I say, as long as we can stay below 1,000 draw calls, we should be perfectly fine. Now on your particle effects, obviously it's got a lot of parameters, one of which is a script that says auto destruct. That will basically destroy it after a certain amount of time. What we want to do is only deactivate, so basically it just switches it off until it's called again. This is for optimization purposes, and it's brilliant for mobile devices. It means that we don't have to keep spawning in new particle effects, we just reuse the same one over and over again. Ensure this has play on awake checked, which it should do, and we're just going to switch this off to begin with. We're simply just going to switch it on and off as when needed. Going to go to game object, create empty, and I'll call this particle fx, so we can keep all of these in place. Going to drag this one onto that object. Yeah, alright, that's perfectly fine. Think of this almost like a folder. I can just close. Also, if we can keep all of these items together, basically means that they're going to render in sequence. So that's going to speed up the process, as they are very similar types. Each time that it goes through, I mean, it has to go through the hierarchy in order anyway. But let's say that we had particle effects, and then we had a ghost, and then we had particle effects, and then we had a bat. Well, these particle effects have a shader of cartoon effects, and these ones have a different shader. Okay, if I can find it. This one has mobile particles additive. Well, each time it goes through here, it's basically switching these shaders over. So if you can keep objects together that share the same shaders, it means that it doesn't have to keep switching those shaders around. So it's going to make it much faster to render. Alright, and it's going to take a lot of stress off the processor and the graphics card. Now all we need to do is basically move these particle effects to wherever our hit took place, whichever object we hit. Okay, so in our script, what we're going to do just beneath the shooting is we're going to say particles. So we need a public game object that we'll simply call zombie particles. And in our shoot, what we're going to do, if we've hit the zombie just before we start our coroutine, we're actually going to switch on our zombie particles. So zombie particles dot well, actually let's move them first. Transform dot position equals the hit dot transform dot position. So it moves them into place, and then we can switch them on. So zombie particles dot set active to true. Okay, now you might be wondering, for example, on this one I've used hit.transform.gameObject set active to false, and on this one I've just used zombie particles set active to true. Why have I used two different systems? Okay, well on this one, the hit is actually the collider. So if I just simply do hit.setActive to true or false, all it's going to do is switch off a collider. So on this one I have to access its transform and then its parent game object and set that to false. Whereas on this, the zombie particles have been brought in as a game object. So by doing set active on that, I know I'm switching off the entire game object. Okay, however, I don't want those particles to remain on forever. So as part of my zombie death, okay, I'm going to simply switch those off after. Oh, actually, no, wait a second. The script should do that for me. That's what this does. Auto destruct, only deactivate. So after the animation is played, that will automatically switch the particles off. All right, so that's good. Let's try this just for the zombie. Ah, I know why. I'll have a red error. Oh, no, actually I haven't. Okay, that's interesting. I forgot to include the particles. All right, I'm going to have... Or perhaps I forgot to save. Okay. Just make sure that you do save. This one has got an asterisk. It shows me that all that work that I've just done hasn't been assigned. So, File, Save. Okay. Now, as it compiles, I should have an empty game slot on my main. There we go, right at the bottom, zombie particles. So now I can drag this skull explosion into there. Alright, now let's see what happens. Okay, and we can see those nice particle effects. Excellent. Okay, so now it's just a case of setting up all of the other particle effects. So the ones that I quite like, and as I say, choose your own. For the bats, I quite like the enemy death skull. Let's have a look, this one. So if I drag this one into the game world, you can see this. Alright, I think that's quite nice. However, this one has a light. Okay, definitely don't recommend having a light. So let's get rid of that. In order to get rid of it, we need to first break the prefab. So right click, prefab, unpack completely. Then we can get rid of this light. Let's get rid of that. Inner glow, skull, and smoke circles. Any one of these you can get rid of if you wanted. Alright, but let's just see what we've got now. Yeah, quite like that. Only want to deactivate this, and it is play on the wake. Alright, excellent. So I'm just going to switch this one off and drag that onto the particle effects. And so now I just need to add this to my script. So this is going to be a public game object called bat particles, and then I simply I'm just going to copy these two lines, Control and C, do the same on the bat, Control and V. This time instead of zombie particles, I simply do bat particles. There we go. All right, and then for the ghost, let me just make sure I save that. For the ghost, I'm choosing some sparks. Okay, so this is CFX4 and sparks explosion. So you see what this looks like. All right, nice and easy. And this one just has one element in it. All right, which is fantastic. Only deactivate, and it does play an awake. So I'm just simply going to switch this one off to begin with. Drag this onto the particle effects. Let's now add this. Public game object, and we have ghost particles. So once again I can just copy these two elements, Control and C. Before I run the coroutine, simply change this to ghost particles. Excellent. Alright, so now I can save this and just add these particles to the script. So under our ground, we now have two empty game slots. So one of them is the enemy death skull and the other one is the sparks explosion. Alright, time to check this out now. So maybe we'll kill the bat to begin with. There we go. Kill the ghost. He disappears, and obviously the zombie. Alright, excellent. Yep, so we've got all sorts of interesting particle effects going on as well now. As a little bit of a task, I would recommend going back into your profiler and taking a look at the changes that have happened as a result of adding all these extra elements. Just take a look at the performance overall and how it's affected your frames per second. Hopefully there's been almost no change whatsoever. Hopefully it's very, very minute and your frames per second should still be extremely high on the computer.